Are live. Before we get started, we want to make sure we have all of our platforms in to join the party for tonight's conversation. All right, and looks like we have everybody in. Welcoming everyone to another installment of the Orange and Blue View. I am one of your hosts, Ron White. On that side of me, you know him, you love him as Dylan Von Arks. Dylan, how are you doing today, my man?
Doing fantastic. We're getting some real Broncos news coming out recently. And on top of that, if training camp's a little too boring for some folks, you got the Olympics going on. So I think it's a win win, especially coming up, hopefully, through the season.
Yeah, that's right. Football, the season is quickly approaching for football. And like you said, there's training camp practice and the Olympics. So this is time where, the sports world is, somewhat heating back up. So it's good to see here. Before we get started with tonight's conversation, though, I want to see who all is in the chat joining us tonight. We got Mr. David Yonkin coming in. Thank you, sir, as always. He says, evening, Ron and DVA. Good evening to you as well, sir. Hopefully, you are doing well on this Saturday. And we got MBLEX test prep. I'm here to party. Yes. So, again, thank you for joining the party. We're here to party with you, man. It's going to be one big, hopefully fun party talking about the Denver Broncos. So it's good to see you there. NBLEX Test Prep. Thank you for coming through. And then we got Daniel Berry Sports Highlights coming in with a yo to you as well. Thank you for coming in, my man. We appreciate it as always. And then we got Greg Smith coming in from Facebook. Thank you, sir. Says, good evening, Broncos country. Denver Broncos for life. Thank you, Greg, for tuning in. We appreciate it. And good evening to you as well. Good to see you in the chat. And Mike S. What's up, Ron, Dylan, and Broncos country? What's up with you, Mike? Hopefully you are doing well on this Saturday, my man. And Ernie Mace coming in from Facebook. Thank you, Ernie. Good to see you in the chat. Says, go Broncos country only. Yes. Again, that's the only fan base that matters. Ron and Dylan. Hello, Ron and Dylan. Thank you, Ernie, again for coming in. We appreciate it. So before we get into some of the talk of training camp, I know we'll get to that here shortly, guys. Dylan, there's been some new details released as it pertains to Courtland Sutton's revised contract for the Denver Broncos. So, as some of you may know, Sutton was due to make 13 million in salary this year, 2 million in that which was guaranteed, and another 500,000 total in game roster bonuses. So that totaled about 13 million for this year. But that revision now, Dylan, gives him a chance to make an extra 1.5 million in possible incentives in 2024. So that means in total he can make as much as 15.2 million this year. But the contract doesn't change anything for 2025. So that is the final year of Sutton's deal, and $0 are guaranteed as of next year. So I'm just gonna say first, I'm glad that they were able to get this done. Just get this behind them. But Dylan, what are your thoughts when it comes to the new details that were released?
Yeah, there's a lot of verbiage in there, and we're going to try and break that down for you as easily as we possibly can. But in terms of just getting Courtland Sutton back, well, he was at camp anyway, but it's just you need that veteran presence in the wide receiver room, and we've been talking about it for months at this point. And Sutton's that guy, obviously. Josh Reynolds, he's a veteran, but he's not a veteran to this team, and he doesn't know the culture here. He hasn't been here. And Nix needs that big-bodied wide receiver, that security blanket, someone he could throw the ball up to. But yeah, I'm super excited about it. I'm a huge fan of Courtland Sutton. Maybe a little overly optimistic at times about him, but everyone's got that player. But yeah, I'm just happy Sutton's going to be here for at least the next 2 years, hopefully. And he's betting on himself. It wasn't new guaranteed money; these are all incentives. So he's betting on himself to have a big year this year.
Yeah, I'm again, like I just said at the top, I'm glad that it got done. I don't think it was much for the Broncos to up the money, especially when it comes to the incentives. I think Sutton is more than deserving of that, especially what he did last year. And also, you're right on the fact that it helps his team out, and especially with Bo Nix, having a person as experienced as Sutton goes a long way for the development of a rookie quarterback. So I am excited. Again, let's see, what happens next year. I'm glad, he's set financially this year, but let's see what happens next year, depending on, how he performs, which I expect good things from him. But I'm just so excited that this has been finalized. All righty. Let's see who else we have in the chat. We got Gary Palmer coming in. Thank you. Super chat. It says, hi, Broncos country, and Ron and Dylan. Go Broncos. Thank you, Gary, for coming in. We appreciate it. And then we got Mr. Phil McLaughlin coming in. Thank you, Phil. We always appreciate you chiming in on the conversations. It's good to see you in here. It says from Facebook, good evening, Ron and Dylan. Do we think that Estime will be the man out in the running back room? Hashtag Buckham, hashtag MHH for life, hashtag Broncos for life. I don't think so, Phil. I think Estime has a shot on this roster. And again, depending on how Javante looks, could be that starter, that bell cow back, obviously if he develops within that as the season progresses. I think for starters though, Dylan, I see Estime more as a short yardage, 3rd and 1, 3rd and goal from the 1 or from the 2. Kind of using that big body to just plow over guys. The guy is massive. So I don't think, Phil, he's gonna be the man out. Just because what I do think, if they keep 4 running backs, we know how many they keep, right? If they keep 4, it's going to be, Javante, McLaughlin, Estime, P. Ryan. But if it's 3, I see P. Ryan being the guy outside looking in. But yeah, I think Estime definitely does have a place on this roster and on this team, Phil.
Yeah, he's 100% going to make this roster. He is going to be taking over for Javante Williams at some point. If not this season, 100% it'll be next season. I don't see them paying Javante. I know he's slimmed down. I believe it was 11 pounds, so he a little less stress on his knees. But until I see that explosion on the field, I'm not going to believe it. And as for the odd man out, I think that's more likely P. Ryan. I know he was very good at catching passes last year, and while that's all well and good, you still have to be a running back, and you still have to hammer it through. And he had some ball security issues. I believe it was 3 or 4 fumbles last year, and that's just something I think the Broncos are looking to eliminate, especially the new look. I say new look offense, but it's more we're seeing Sean Payton's offense come more into shape going into year 2. So I personally, I think it's going to be Javante Williams, Jaleel, Estime, and Blake Watson. And then obviously you want to throw the fullback in there as well. But Estime is definitely going to make this roster. I think they drafted him to be the successor to Javante Williams. And before I go any further, I see some talk on the side about Piran being traded for Dawson Knox.
Also, Knox, yeah.
That's false.
Oh,
I
yeah.
saw it I think I saw it yesterday. It was, I can't remember the name of the account. I think it's Mile High Mims or something.
Yeah.
He's a fan as well, and he likes to troll every once in a while. So
Mm-hmm.
he kind of just threw that out there, just to snuff out any of that talk. That would be nice though. Straight up P Ryan for Knox. We could use a tight end.
Yeah, that would be nice. Yeah, I saw that out there too, and I'm like, just wishful thinking on my part. I was like, oh wow, really? Then I'm like, nah, so someone's trolling us. But yeah, I think so. You mentioned Blake Watson, and I just now I can see. I think him being on that NFI list kind of it might set him back.
Mm-hmm.
So again, given that, that's why I had those four. Again, if they were going to keep four, P Ryan's going to make it.
Mm-hmm.
And I know, he can come off that anytime in training camp. So, if he comes off and performs as we expect him to during training camp, yeah, he can definitely be that fourth RB. But again, I just don't know what that timeline looks like when he's going to get back, how far he's going to be set back because of that. So that's kind of why I'm like, but we'll see. I like Watson a lot, though. I mean, what he can do, I mean, his versatility is definitely something that is, great. And I know Sean Payton loves that, kind of like an Alvin Kamara type guy, in his offense. But we'll see what happens there. But yeah, Phil, thank you for coming in. As always, my guy. All right, let's see who else we have.
Oh, and just to clarify,
Oh, he
did meet.
Yeah, he meant P Ryan. Okay, we got you. Yeah, so I think okay. Now we're in the line, Phil. Okay, gotcha. No worries. All righty. Let's see here. Mike S. Glad they re-signed Sutton and Miners. Yes. Yes. Again, as we just said, the Sutton thing, they just needed to get that done. That wasn't much for the Broncos to do. I am very happy that the Miners deal got done. I mean, it needed to get done.
Mm-hmm.
And some people were talking about, the amount of. I was like, well, guards are getting paid well here. I mean, so that's to be expected, and he deserves it. He deserves that contract. So I am so glad they've nailed that down. And we'll see what Miners can do. I mean, the guy's just a mauler, and I'm looking to see more of that in the upcoming season.
Yeah, I love the Miners pick or re-signing just because, or the extension rather, because you need continuity on that offensive line, and you can't keep having a revolving door. You need that synergy, and if you have guys playing together, not even just through the season, but from year to year, that's going to pay out dividends. And we know that Sean Payton is a big proponent of stacking that offensive line. So the only spot I'm concerned about would be center. So if they could figure out who's going to be there, I'm pretty happy with everyone else on the line. Not ecstatic about, McGlinchey has his faults, and Ben Powers didn't really play super well last season, but I'm hoping with another year altogether they can find some synergy and be stronger.
Well, speaking of synergy, strength, and what can make you stronger, some big wireless providers can make you stronger. So with big wireless providers, what you see is never what you get. Somewhere between the store and your first month's bill, the price you thought you were paying magically skyrockets. With Mint Mobile, you'll never have to worry about gotchas ever again. When Mint Mobile says $15 a month when you purchase a 3-month plan, they mean it. So say bye to your overpriced wireless plans, jaw-dropping monthly bills, and unexpected overages.
To get this new customer offer and your new 3-month premium wireless plan for just $15 a month, go to mintmobile.com/huddle. That's mintmobile.com/huddle. cut your wireless bill to $15 a month at mintmobile.com/huddle. $45 upfront payment required, equivalent to $15 per month. New customers on first 3-month plan only. Speed slower above 40 gigs on unlimited plan. Additional taxes, fees, restrictions apply. See Mint Mobile for details.
All right. So we got Gary here saying, I see Javonte and Estime sharing. Possibly. Gary, I just really think it's going to depend on, how Javonte looks as training camp progresses. I mean, I can see him. I think it's, running back by committee. That's how Sean Payton usually likes to run it there in that group. And yeah, there's definitely going to be some sharing amongst them. But as far as more of the touches, I can see if Javonte at least gets to 80% of what he was his rookie year, Javonte taking on more of those carries. I'm encouraged by the fact that, he got his weight down, Dylan. So he looks like he's in shape and ready to go. But, they don't have any pads. Let's just see what happens when the pads come on. Let's just see what happens when he starts to integrate with contact and things like that. But you could only be encouraged so far by what you've seen. Now, again, Estime may come in more. At least it's kind of how I see the first part of the season here, Dylan, where I do, again, if Javonte looks good in camp, Javonte getting more of the carries, Estime coming in and more, situational types of, plays and whatnot. But again, if Javonte goes back to what he was last year, then you may see more targets. There are more carries for Estime. But yeah, let's see how it all shakes out in training camp. As it moves on.
Definitely. I think what we've seen with Sean Payton in the past, typically his lead back will get 45-50% of the carries, and then everyone else kind of shares the rest of that. And if Javonte can hold up, he's going to get that possibly 50% of carries. But that's where Estime comes in. If Javante's not looking so hot, maybe his knee has really sapped a lot of his explosion and he's not the same as what he was, Estime could easily slide in there and take his job. He's even a little better in the receiving game as well, and with his vision. So if problems start to creep up or some uncomfortableness in his knee, Estime could definitely take his job and become the lead man, getting the bulk of the carries while the rest share the other 50% or so.
Yeah. Well, we will see. Only time will tell. Thank you again, Gary, for coming in with that. We appreciate it. Let's see who else we have. Got Greg Smith coming back in from Facebook. Thank you, Greg. He asked, will they extend any more contracts before the season starts? The only one, well, I know it's been talked about, but I don't think any side is too worried about it. But the only one I can see maybe before the season starts is Patrick Surtain. I'm Dylan. I'm more on the side of get it done as soon as you can when it comes to PS2. But again, from what we've heard, from PS2 himself, he's more on the lines of it'll get done when it gets done. He knows he wants to be here, and the team wants him there as well. So I think they know that something will get done eventually. That they're not in a rush to do anything. But I think again, Greg, that might be the only one that you can see maybe getting done before the season starts, at least to my knowledge.
Yeah, and it kind of sucks that the Jaguars, decided to reset the market at another position, corner, Tyson Campbell, as of course when Patrick Surtain's contract's coming up, and just much like they did with Christian Kirk a few years ago, paying him a boatload of money. I think that would be more of an after the season type of signing. That seems the direction it's headed. And like you mentioned, Patrick Surtain doesn't seem too concerned about it. He's here to ball. He's at camp. He's not holding out. And as long as that's happening, I don't think there's really a need for concern. Not another player, not one that would happen, I don't think, before the season starts, but you could maybe see a Bulls extension or a rework after this year. It would just depend on his play. But yeah, nothing beyond that, I would think, would be before the season starts.
Yeah. Yep. I'm right there with you. All righty. Thank you. Thank you, Greg. We appreciate it. All righty. So switching gears there now, Gillen. Let's get to the quarterbacks and all the questions on Stidham, Wilson. How does Nix look? So Doug Tessier, thank you, Doug, saying here, Bull will be named a starter by the end of the week. Okay. But that's, maybe, I think Doug, we know. I mean, we know already now who the starter is, but obviously they just have to name one. That's a formality. But yeah, so Bo, I want to get your thoughts. Ever since training camp started, Dylan, and up until now, I guess, what do you think? Like, how he looks, is it to be expected? I know today he did have a great day. Now I know there was that one interception near the start. I think it was Levi Wallace that picked him off, but I think after that it was completion. I think he also had 3 touchdowns as well. So I guess, given what you've seen and heard so far, how would you assess Bo, and if he's making that progress to be named that starter for week 1?
And I've said it for a while now. I think he's already the starter, or he should be anyway. And I think he's progressing just how you would expect a rookie. There's some ups and there's some downs. Obviously, I'm not there at camp. I'm only gleaning what I can see from threads posted either to X or and clips and what have you. But from what I've gathered, Nix, even when he's missing a receiver, he's relatively close to his target. He's not throwing erratic throws like Zach Wilson, which I heard some people saying yesterday. Oh, he's turning it around. He's still in the race, and he completed 3 out of 10 passes. It's just they focus on the wow play, and we know Zach Wilson's capable of the wow plays. It's everything in between. Can you play normal quarterback? Can you sit in the pocket and deal? He can't. I don't even want to hear his name in the discussion anymore. Not worth the breath. But yeah, back to Bo. I mean, he did have a pretty bad pick at the beginning of practice, and obviously that you could see that video around, which is a shame. I'm seeing more of that than his touchdown, because he had a great touchdown pass to Javonte Williams.
Yep.
At the pylon in the end zone. I believe it was a 15-yard pass, and it was pretty awesome. If you guys can find it, you should definitely check it out. But I think Bo should be named the starter sooner rather than later, because let's get him these reps. If he's already looking close, on the level, or even better than Stidham, let's not play any games here. Let's get him the reps. Let's get him up to speed. Let's make sure he's playing consistently with the same receivers, not the Joe Schmoes, not to be rude, but the third stringers. Let's put him out there with the starters so we can get chemistry with them. We don't need this dog and pony show, quite frankly. And Stidham is just playing too safe. He's playing to keep his job, not playing to win the starting role. It reminds me vaguely of the Teddy Bridgewater and Drew Lock kind of situation.
Yeah.
Like, it's similar to that, where it's like, we know what Teddy is. We know he's not going to take a lot of risks. That's kind of what Stidham, except I think I would take Teddy over Stidham personally. But there's just no reason that Bo shouldn't be named the starter 3 days ago, in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree with everything you said. I mean, as far as Bo's concerned, it's to be. I think it's going as expected. Those first few days, I would say he was good to pretty good.
Mhm.
Um, there were some throws he missed early on, but I think today he definitely shown some signs of improvement for sure. As I mentioned, those 3 touchdowns. I think one was you mentioned the one to Williams. I think the other 2 were to Piron and Dulcich. There was a nice little throw at the back of the end zone to Dulcich.
That
That
was
was
sweet.
really cool.
Mm.
And so when you look at it, you know, I think those are some plays where you say, hey, this is, enough to make him the starter. Not only that, you see him, you know, going deep a lot. I'm not afraid to take those risks. Now, I know some of those throws, a lot of people are going to say, hey, he overthrew Franklin. I see a lot of that on. I was
Yeah.
like, well, the ball was not even there. And I'm like, well, some of that is not all on Bo. Sometimes the receiver can make that adjustment or stretch out to grab. So again, not all of it's on Bo, guys. But again, you have to be happy, I would say, with his progress, at least so far, in camp. And again, I think if we were to look at the start so far from the first day up until now, you can definitely say, I would say it like this. It was Stidham, Nix, like kind of together up
Mhm.
into today. And then today, Nix really kind of took a few steps above.
Mhm.
So with that, that's also a way you should maybe kind of assess, or Peyton, I'm definitely sure it's going to be in his assessment of him being the starter. And the point on Stidham, you're right. He just looks so, I don't even want to say
Vanilla.
average, very pedestrian, very just no pizzazz, like just nothing. Like it's
Mhm.
just like you say, he's playing just to play it safe. Like he doesn't want to. I will give him that. Like he doesn't want to turn the ball over. He completes it, but it's just you don't see any wow when it comes to sit. So
Mhm.
again, that's why I like the pickup of Nix, and again, that's why Nix should be the starter, because you see more of that cerebral quarterback guy coming out, and you also see him challenging the field vertically. So
Yeah, and it's Sean Payton likes a guy who's going to take some risks because and it's training camp. Go try and make those plays. Try and fit a ball into a smaller window. Try and chuck it deep. These are the times to make mistakes. I know it's a competition, but he wants to see that you will actually go for it. And if you're not taking those shots and taking those calculated risks, like, why do I want you starting if you're not going to go out there and make an extra effort? When you should be trying to push the ball down the field as Jarrett Stidham. You're not trying to, win the backup job. That's not winning. You're settling into it.
yeah.
You settled for your job. So, Bo taking those risks, I like it. But yeah, he's just shown more than enough, at least to me, that he should already be named starter. Maybe we'll see that Monday when the pads come on. Hopefully that's the case.
Yes, for sure. Yeah, but Doug, we're right there with you. I think, you know, I think we already know he's going to be the starter, but yeah, they should do it sooner. May name it sooner than later for sure. Thank you, Doug. Alrighty, let's see who else we have in the chat. David Youngkin coming in. It's a good question here. He says, with all the tight ends that Sean has in place, who will be the number one starter? Ooh, this is a good question. So I'll say this: if Dulcich is healthy, and again it looks like, knock on wood, he remains that way. But if Dulcich is healthy, he's your star. He's your number one.
Yeah.
He's your number one. What what Dulcich can do I've said this when I was on the show with Thomas on Wednesday that Dulcich isn't a complete tight end because again I think there's still some elements of his game, Dylan, that he has to work on, especially in the blocking. But I will say how he can stretch the field when he has the ball in his hands. And he looks like a receiver. He looks like a receiver most times.
Mm-hmm.
So I just think with his talent, with his ability, David, when he's open, the ball he just finds it. And again, I think given what he can do with his characteristics, his traits, you can't have anyone else be the start. Now I will say I liked what I've seen from Lucas Kroll. I know Peyton's hyped him up. Some people also Broncos fans have hyped him up, and I like what I've seen and heard. But coming out of UCLA, his rookie year of Dulcich, I mean, that game of the Jaguars, Dylan, always resonates in my mind. When I think there was just that one drive. That was I call it the Dulcich drive. That was just his drive.
Mm-hmm.
So you need a security blanket like that for Bo Nix. So I think, David, all said and done, number one starter from a tight end position, Greg Dulcich.
100%. Yeah, like you mentioned, if everyone's healthy, Dulcich will be that guy. He's faster than a linebacker and he's bigger than a corner. He's a mismatch. He's a chess piece, and that's what Sean Payton loves in his tight ends. Yet Jimmy Graham, anyone? Like I'm not gonna. He's not the same guy. I'm just saying like this. What Sean Payton can do with a versatile tight end is going to completely change his offense because we saw last year Adam Troutman, 3-yard catch and then just goes down immediately. Like there's no fight in him after that. He doesn't have that dog in him. Dulcich has that. He can break open a game like we've seen. Like you mentioned, that Jaguars game, his first touchdown in the Chargers game.
Yeah.
He's just a beast, and it's a dimension that this offense hasn't had in a long time since Julius Thomas. Obviously, we had Owen Daniels there for a year, and he was solid. But if we're talking like a true game breaker, we haven't had that in a while. And mostly Julius Thomas, that was a lot of Peyton Manning, So hopefully the better quarterback play can elevate the tight end room as a whole. And I think we will see Dulcich, a healthy Dulcich, be that starter this season.
Yes, most definitely. Thank you, Dave, for coming in. That was a very good question. Let's see. We got Phil coming in again from Facebook. Thank you, Phil. Says, with injuries already at safety, are we concerned? I am. Just because who do you have? Brandon Jones is out with that hammy. Who with Caden Stearns is Peyton already said that he has a long way to go, a long road to go.
He was back on the practice field today, actually.
Oh, he was? Okay.
Which was nice to see. Good. I'm not sure in what capacity, but he was out there, I believe, doing some drills and whatnot. I'm not sure how the rules work because you have to take a guy off a pup to be able to do certain things, but he was out there on the field, so that was some encouraging news.
Okay, thanks for that. Yeah, I didn't see or hear that he was out there, so that I guess that's good, depending on how you look at it. But still, I'm still concerned just because it's real thin there. Brandon Jones and Stearns. Now, again, I know they said it might be a week or two before Brandon Jones, I think, get back from what Peyton said. And, I don't think, Phil, it's enough to be overly concerned. So let me kind of qualify that a bit. I'm not like terribly or overly concerned, but I think it's time where you start to get slightly concerned just because, these injuries, especially at the safety group, that's kind of haunted the Broncos in the past. And, now I don't want that to translate into the season, but It's starting to have a little cause for pause, but again, we'll see how, you know, if this hammy can heal up in the next week or two for Brandon Jones and go from there.
Yeah, and so my answer is I was concerned before injuries. To be honest, it's I like PJ Locke. I'm not worried about him. Brandon
Yeah.
Jones, I also like, but he played his best ball as that third safety, not a starting safety. So more a little uncertainty, I guess, there instead of truly worried. But then, like you mentioned, after that, Caden Stearns can't stay healthy. Obviously, he was on the practice field today. Is it going to stay that way? Is he going to get activated off a pup? JL Skinner didn't get many snaps last season, so while we might be optimistic about his potential and whatnot, we don't know what he is yet. And then you have guys like Devon Key and whatnot, and Galarian Turner-Yell is, I believe, he's also injured. So it's I was concerned before the injuries, but now that makes it weigh on my mind just a little bit more there. But hopefully, Caden Stearns at least being back on the practice field with his pads on. Hopefully, that's a good omen. Hopefully, that's a sight for the future of him at least being able to practice, which would be just exponential for the secondary.
Yeah, and just anything we can get from Stearns at this point, Dylan.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, kind of like it's really similar to Dulcich. Like anything we can get from Dulcich at this point, the guy should stay injured, but if we can get anything, I think that'll really help this team a long way. But we'll see. We will see for sure. All righty. Thank you, Phil, for that question. Let's see who else we have. We got Howie freaking Day coming in from Facebook. Thank you, Howie. Thanks for joining the party. He says, "Evening, gentlemen. How does the total offense look with each QB? Flow, energy, or effort seem different?" Hashtag Buckham. Yes, I would say it does look different with each one. And we kind of alluded to a little bit earlier, Howie, but we can kind of go through a bit of a summary. For Bo, the offense looks very efficient. I feel as though Dylan, when Bo is in, I picture this is kind of how Sean Payton envisions the offense. Like, everything's getting completed, like the short stuff, the check downs, and then he's taking the risk. So you see that. Obviously, I'm not saying that Bo Nix is Drew Brees, but you see a lot of those elements there, and you just see with Bo a sense of calm, and he's getting command of it. Again, he's not willing to shy away from risk. So very willing to just take those risks and learn and improve. With Stidham, Howie, it was just like, so you just see a guy playing not to lose the backup job.
Going through
You
the
see,
motion.
yeah, you just see the guy there that he's just okay. Let's complete this check down. I'm not going to take any risks. 7-yard pass. Here you go. It's just very, like, so it's just very pedestrian, very very boring. Again, it's good that he's protecting the ball, but again, from a quarterback, you want to see more, you know, person kind of taking those risks and going deep and scrambling and things like that. And you don't see that as much from Stidham. So it looks very kind of boring, a little slow at times with Stidham. With Zach, I mean, I don't know how to sum up Zach, Dylan.
Erratic.
I think that might be the word. No, I would say erratic overall. It's a you lose the flow when it comes to Zach Wilson for sure, Howie. Just because he's all over the place. Wilson doesn't have a wherewithal of you know where people are in the field. I just feel as though and then he scrambles when he doesn't have to. So, I just see a lot of, you're right. I think that's the word, just erratic from Wilson. But yeah, I would say Howie, it's different type of flow and energy from each quarterback.
Yeah, 100%. Like you mentioned with Bo, efficient when his misses are when he has misses, he's still relatively on target. It's not like he's throwing 10 yards away from his receiver, like Zach Wilson has been doing. And then with Stidham, yeah, it's very by the numbers, boring. He's the best kind of backup, is what I'm trying to say. um, but and then with Zach Wilson, it's like, yeah, he can make a wow play, but when you're in the team periods, for the most part, obviously you're not sacking the quarterback, but in many of the scenarios that he's been in, he would have been sacked, and he just has more time to hold on to the ball because it's training camp. You're not going to knock down the quarterback. They might blow a whistle or something, but they let him go typically. So Zach Wilson, like I mentioned, don't care. He's he's the furthest from winning the starting job by a mile. But it's just, yeah, I think you could tell the energy is different, and this is why I want Bo just to be announced as a starter. It's like let's just get him running with the same guys. Obviously, you want him to have some chemistry with the backups, but just get him some consistency. I want to see some consistency and building some chemistry. I don't want him to be switching day to day with which receivers and which offensive line and which running backs he's with.
Yeah, and as Phil mentions here, to back up what we're saying as far as Bo should start, it's going to be a hit on Peyton if you draft a quarterback in the first round and don't start him. It's different if you have a Pro Bowl or a Hall of Fame, but we don't. Nix has to start. Yes, Phil. I agree 100%. Like, he was the number 12 overall pick. Before picking him, this roster had, and still does, have Stidham and has Wilson. So there's no Hall of Fame, veteran. You can say Stidham is somewhat of a veteran, but like I said, he's very boring. He doesn't have any great wow aspects of his game. So with that, you have to start him. You have to get him out there with the first team so he can build that chemistry, build that rapport with the players, get the reps. Because that goes far when it comes to the psyche of a quarterback, of getting the reps, making sure they can get familiar and comfortable with the scheme, so they can get used to certain coverages and different protections, and when they go out in the game, they'll be a little bit more prepared. So yeah, I'm right there with you, Phil. Nix has to start. I'm right there with you.
Yeah, listen, coming out of the draft, or not even coming out of the draft, but pre-draft, Peyton was asked about, you think you're good at evaluating quarterbacks? And he goes, we're the best at it. We know what we're doing.
Yeah.
So then you take a quarterback in the first round and you don't start him? How's that look? Not very good, especially when you're hyping up all his college experience. So, okay, he's a little more prepared to start. I know it's not the same game. College to the NFL, it's different. But he has that experience. He's got his footwork down a little more. He knows how to run more of a pro-style offense. And you talk about how he gets off the ball quick, and you give him all these compliments and give him his flowers, and you don't start him? That's a stupid pick. Why are you taking him at 12? Like, you might as well have just ran with Stidham this year. And maybe people think that's like hyperbole. Maybe that's too much. I don't know what you get starting Stidham. We know what he is. He's a check down king. He's a game manager. He's a career backup. And I know it's 5 years. We would have seen something by now. So you have no reason not to start him. And just to add to this a little bit, Mike Reno is saying, Bo already said he expects to start against Seattle. Did no one catch that? if he's not saying he wants to start or he is the starter, I don't want him here. If he doesn't have the confidence in himself to come and be like, yeah, I expect to start, why are you in the NFL? Why are you here? Don't show up. Just stay home if you're not gonna say that you want to be the starter and you want to take control of this team. And I don't know if Stidham mentioned that. I know Zach Wilson was kind of like, oh, we're all buddies, we're in a competition, we're competing. But Bo Nix, he says he wants to be the starter. I believe him.
Yeah, and he's given us reason not. I mean, what is he giving us to not believe him? Right? I mean, again, drafted that high. I like the confidence. I mean, even in his presser when he got to Death Valley, he was just confident about hey, I played in 61 games, experienced starter, and I think someone also asked about the down the field throws, and he's like he has a lot of those as well. So
Mm-hmm.
I like his confidence, and you're right, Dylan. Like you're a first round pick. Why would you say anything else? I'm here to start. I can show you why I should be the starter. I've shown you, and I'm continuing to do that. So yeah, I'm right there with you that he should be confident enough to make that statement. And I'm really do think that he will be out there in week 1. But
Mm-hmm.
yeah, thanks Mike for that. We appreciate it. I want to grab because these two questions are actually I would say more the same. So I'm going to show both of them and then we'll answer here. Shiloh has come in. Thank you, Shiloh. He says, Ron and Dylan, who do we expect to make the biggest plays once the pads are on Monday? Offensive line, one of the defenders. And then Howie freaking Day comes in with pads coming on Monday. Who do you think shines first? Offense or defense? So Dylan, for me, is going to be defense.
Mm-hmm.
I think defense always at the start of every camp, defense is always ahead of the offense. And as we said today, Bo Nix looked good, but then he did have that one pick. And you've also heard since the beginning of camp just how this defense has been flying around. Um, I know there were times I think Thomas Nkum got in the back. We've heard some sightings of Zach Allen, too. So, I they said Riley Moss has looked pretty good as well. So, Howie and Shiloh, I think it's probably going to be somebody from I either think it's going to be the somebody on the defensive line or in the secondary that's going to be making the biggest play when the pads come on. I, it might be. I'll pick one person. I'm going to say Riley Moss makes a play when the pad comes on. That's what I'm going to say. But defense.
Gotcha. Yeah. I want to cop out and say the trenches, but if I got to pick one, I have to go with that newly improved defensive line, like you mentioned. Zach Allen has been tearing it up in practice, and obviously there's only so much the offensive line can do. They don't have pads, and the same goes for the defensive side, though. So you got Franklin Myers, you got Zach Allen. That duo is going to be fierce up the middle, and I'm really excited to see them once the pads come on. But for the offense, at the same time, I think this is a very strong unit on the offensive line, and once they get the pads on, they actually get to put the pressure to these defensive linemen a little more, and that's exciting for me. So I think the defense will probably shine more at first, but as a whole, I think the trenches, it's going to be a fun and just interesting battle to watch.
Yeah, I the defensive line, and this goes again. Thank you, Howie and Shiloh. Again, goes to Greg Smith's question: how was the D line looking so far in training camp? From what I've heard and seen, Greg, they look good. They look good. Now again, I'm not I'm not holding my breath. Again, again, keep in mind there are no pads, so you have to take all that into consideration. But from what we've seen, um, even the backups, obviously we mentioned Zach Allen, but like I said, Nkum and those folks have gotten in the backfield quite a lot. So I, I like what I've been seeing, Greg. They look good, but we just have to see when the pad comes on and obviously through the preseason if those issues have been resolved. Like we knew those issues in the run game last year. They were just atrocious in the run game last year. So again, as training camp proceeds, getting into these preseason games, let's see if that's been rectified. But so far, so good.
Yeah, definitely. The interior I've heard plenty about of that defensive
Yes.
line. And outside of Incoom, however, I haven't heard too much noise about the edge room, which that'll probably change when the pads come on. But I'd like to hear a little more fire out of there.
Mhm.
Especially you got a rookie in Jonah Ellis, you got Benito, Cooper, and Browning, and I expect big things from Browning this year. Especially he has to stay healthy. And if he can, he's going to be a force on this defense. He was a monster when he came back during the Green Bay game last year. He absolutely killed it. And I hope to see more of that from him. But yeah, in general, I'm not too worried about the interior, which is a flip from last year. Uh, the edge room is where I'd like to hear some more noise from for sure.
Yeah, I do as well. I'm still a little hesitant, I guess, concerned about this edge room, Dylan. I like Browning a lot. Again, knock on wood. Hopefully he can stay healthy because he is definitely a force. And Nick Benito. But I still want a premier, like a Batman level pass rusher. And that's yet to be seen here when it comes to your Denver Broncos. So, can Browning be that? Maybe, but again, I need to hear more. I need to hear more of them living in the backfield, even when the pads come on. And, I want to see, even in preseason, like sack production. I want to see kind of how all that comes, if it comes to fruition. But I'm still, again, I'm not so sold yet on edge. I'm not sold there yet. But yeah, Greg, to answer your question, the defensive line, that interior looks good. Um, so far so good. So, all righty. So we are at 53 minutes. Man, sorry, coming up on an hour. Wow.
Time
All
flies,
right.
man.
The time does fly. Let's just see if before we get out of here, if there's anyone that we have missed. Let's see here.
Looks like
I'm
we
not
about covered
seeing.
it, I think,
We about covered everybody. Yeah.
for sure.
All right. So, um, before we get out, we want to pull this up. Thank you, Shiloh, for coming in. Thanks for a great show, fellas. Have a evening. Good evening, everyone. Thanks for sticking it out in the chat with me, Mike. Fun to have this course. Yes. Yes,
Yep.
Shiloh. It's always good, when you guys ask questions for us, when you guys are talking in the chat. Again, it's always good conversation, man. But again, thank you for coming in. And then we got David Youngkin here saying, "Okay, guys, great show as always. Have a great night." Thank you, David. We appreciate it. All right, so that will do it for tonight's episode. Thank you all for tuning in once again to tonight's installment. We appreciate it. If you're not doing so already, make sure you like, subscribe, and share. on all the platforms. We'd greatly appreciate it. And if you haven't already, make sure you follow us on X, formerly known as Twitter. I am at Ron White NFL, and my co-host is at Dylan Vaughn Arts MHH. Feel free to hit us up during the week, send us some stuff, ask us some questions. We'll definitely respond. Um, Before we get out of here, Dylan, you have a few orders of business want to take care of.
Yeah, just thank you, everyone in the chat. Really appreciate you jumping in, but we want to give a little extra love to those who decided to donate to us tonight. Gary Palmer, as always, good to see you, my friend. Phil McLaughlin, always helping in the chat, giving us some very thought-provoking questions. And Howie freaking Day. Thank you guys so much. We really can't do this without you guys, and even with just everyone else in the chat. It's you guys always come up with great questions, keep the conversation moving. There's times where I'm like, I think it might be slow, Ron. Are we going to make it to a full hour? We're going to even make it to 30 minutes, and here we are coming up on the hour mark. So appreciate you all in the chat.
Yes. Before I get out here, there are actually a few last minute questions that I want to touch on.
Sure.
Compliments to Greg and Phil. Thank you guys for coming, and I'll put these together just because I want to briefly touch on this before I go. Greg coming on Facebook. Thank you, Greg. Any favorites to replace Jewel in the middle? And then Phil asks, how concerned are we with the linebackers? I'm assuming you mean the inside linebackers. So it's going to be Jonas Griffith, I think, to be that replacement. I'm a big fan of Griffith's game. I know he's coming off that injury, but you know what the guy can do in the middle is very good. He's very physical, very athletic. So hopefully he can come help, especially in coverage. We know what Alex Singleton brings, tackling machine, but you know, hopefully you'll need somebody else to kind of tighten up the middle, help in coverage, you know, can go toe to toe with a lot of those running backs. And I see, and maybe tight ends. And I see Griffith being that guy. And I know there's been some buzz on Barton. You know, I'm not so sold yet on him, Dylan. But I think, you know, Greg here, I would definitely say Griffith would be that one to be the replacement.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. As far as am I concerned about the linebackers? Yes, it's like right up there with tight end. That's kind of a weird room. Not really loving many of the guys. You know, Singleton's he's solid. He gets a lot of tackles, but he also misses a lot. How's he going to be being the leader of the middle of that defense? Cody Barton doesn't inspire much confidence for me. Jonas Griffith has got to be the guy, like you mentioned. Really good coverage skills. He obviously plays with special teams, but if he's going to be starting, I don't want him anywhere near there, especially coming off an injury. So if I had to pick someone to start next to Singleton, it would have to be Jonas Griffith because I think they complement each other fairly well.
Yep. Right there with you. All righty. So thanks again, guys, for tuning in. Again, thanks for those last minute questions. And thank you everyone for tuning in again. And we will see you all next week. Go Broncos. Have a great night.
Go Broncos.